Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Delia Valles Rosales, and I am at Texas A&M at Kingsville, and I am with the NSF HSI STEM Hub. I co-host this webinar series with Dr. Marta Desmond from New Mexico State University. I would like to welcome you to our second webinar of our fall webinar series targeting grant writing. Today's topic is mentoring incoming cohorts for success. A little bit of housekeeping before we start the webinar. The webinar will last 1 hour. We have 2 speakers this afternoon. Each one of the speakers will distribute the time, and we will have approximately from 15 to 20 minutes for questions at the end of both presentations. So if you have questions related to the webinar, specifically focus on the speaker's topics, please write down your question in the question box. However, if you have questions related to technical issues, please write down your questions on the chat box. Dr. Marta Desmond and I will be curating questions, and specifically at the end of the presentation, both presentations, and if we do not have enough time for the presentations, we will certainly make sure that we post the presentations in our portal. Everybody is welcome to join our portal and become members, and it is a free membership. We highly invite you to do that and suggest you to do that. One of the things that we really encourage everybody is to answer a survey. It is a 5-minute survey that is absolutely important for us to collect some information from you. It will not take more than 5 minutes to do this survey. And this survey will be, the link to the survey will be posted in the chat room. And the reason for the survey is for us to collect data and to report this data to the NSF as part of the measure, to measure our program outcomes. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to our speakers this afternoon. Dr. Chris Anderson is an associate professor and chair of the Department of Biology Sciences at the Dominican University. Dominican University is a regional Catholic and Hispanic serving institution just outside of Chicago, Illinois. Dr. Anderson conducted his postdoctoral research in the laboratory of Dr. Alex Cordova in the Institute of Ecology at the National Autonomous University in Mexico from 2010 to 2012. In 2009, Dr. Anderson completed his PhD in Dr. Greg Geder's laboratory in UCLA in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. His research interests are varied, and that includes broadening participation in STEM and topics related to sexual selection and diversification of odonates. Dr. Anderson serves as a principal investigator for an NSF award specifically focused on the HSI Hispanic serving institutions, and he's also a senior personnel and faculty on the site lead on another National Science Foundation program called the Alliance for Minority Participation. Our second speaker is Dr. Carol Chauvin. She is a professor of mathematics of California State University at Northridge. She is the PI of the NSF Data Science Program with career support and connections to industry. This is an interdisciplinary workforce training program in data science that encompasses coursework and research projects linked to emerging efforts in the public and private sectors. The program targets capable undergraduates enrolled in mathematics and computer science, specifically applied to mathematics and statistics options, whoever wants a career in industry. Welcome both of you as speakers this afternoon, and we really appreciate the time that you are taking to be with us. Please, Dr. Anderson, please go ahead and start your presentation. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for the invitation. So yeah, I'm delighted to talk to you today about our HSI program grant, which we were funded in the 2018 solicitation, but began in 2019. So our grant date began January 2019, which means we're just wrapping up our fourth year of the 5-year grant. And so yeah, this is sort of a disclaimer, right? That you know, it's opinions are mine, not necessarily represent the views of the National Science Foundation, right? One of the things I also wanted to acknowledge at the very start, right, is that this is a very much a collaborative project, right? So I'm the PI, but as we sort of went and wrote the grant, right, and since some of the specific theme is about sort of grant writing today, right, I really did partner very closely with faculty associate of mine, Tina Taylor-Ritzler, and our Department of Psychology. The one piece of advice I'd have to say, if you're thinking about writing a specific sort of broadening participation grant in general, is really partnering with social science researchers. If you're from a STEM field, getting somebody with some social science disciplinary expertise, right? And so Tina brought in a colleague of her, Persis Schreiber, who's also in the Department of Psychology. And then as you will see, a big portion of our work actually takes place not only in academic affairs, but also in our division of student success and engagement. And I want to acknowledge the contributions of my colleagues in that division at Dominican, right? So I'm going to real quickly sort of talk a little bit about sort of where Dominican is, what it's like, right? And then a little bit about our model, which includes the Summer Bridge, a peer-led team learning program, inclusive pedagogy, and student success case management, right? And so I don't imagine many people have heard of Dominican University or of our specific Dominican University. I know there's a Dominican University in California, right? We are tiny, right? But we are regional serving, right? So we're a Catholic comprehensive teaching university located in River Forest, which is the suburb of Chicago. About 2,100 undergraduates, primarily from the surrounding metropolitan area. We are not just Hispanic serving, but we are majority Hispanic, right? So we've quickly transitioned past that sort of 25% HSI threshold all the way to our new freshman enrollment was 68.5 in this most recent incoming fall. And as a commuter campus, right, we do serve a lot of first generation students, a lot of Pell eligible students. So that's just a little bit about the place that I work, right? We have sort of two components to the design, right? And we were sort of tasked in terms of the solicitation, in terms of working on critical transitions. So thinking about in STEM disciplines, moving from the first and second year of coursework into sort of persisting through to upper division coursework. And so the first component of our intervention is essentially a pre-college intervention. Is the Summer Bridge program, and I heard a lovely presentation from what's her name? Is Doris Espiritu, right, from Wright College. She was presented to this group last Friday about their bridge program. We actually were supposed to launch it in 2020, but obviously COVID sort of interfered with that. So we've run this for 2 years now, and actually have pursued a hybrid model where we actually have students meet for 4 weeks, right, in terms of sort of Zoom sessions, right, and these are with individual faculty members in our Department of Psychology that talk a little bit about the cognitive science of learning, right? And then we do hands-on lab experiments taught by STEM faculty the week before college starts, right? And so we have a series of sort of 2-day, right, sort of back-to-back lab experiments that we end up doing, and then talk a little bit about sort of orientation to sort of STEM at Dominican, right? And so one of the things that's really fun about that is that everybody's in the same cohort in terms of this sort of virtual programming, but then they split up into sub-specific groups. And we actually end with a specific poster session where they share back with their specific individual groups. So here's some examples of some of the pictures of some of our summer bridges. As you sort of guessed, I'm an ecology and evolutionary biologist. So in the upper left-hand corner here, with Cherie, right, is some of our students actually searching for aquatic macroinvertebrates, right? We have a chemistry professor up here in the upper right hand by a hood, and this is my colleague Rena Kalin-Jagman, a molecular biologist. So in terms of getting students sort of actively involved in collecting data, but also working in small sort of cohort groups, right, is the sort of the aim of that specific individual project, right? And then finally reporting back. And so it's been a very nice sort of introduction, right, into sort of welcoming students to our campus, right? The other thing that's paired about our sort of mentoring approach is that we have a pre-college model and then we have an academic year intervention, right? And really, we consider this academic year intervention to be part of like altogether, it's the STEM gateway, right? So in our gateway STEM classes, we're really looking to do 4 specific types of things. We're thinking about trying to affect an inclusive classroom environment that has active and collaborative learning, right? We're trying to get students to gather in small, specific individual groups outside of class, right? And these are specifically our peer-led team learning workshops. And then we're also hoping to meet students' non-academic needs with case management support, right? And so when we think about the types of the scale of our intervention, right, we've got some academic support that's happening in class. We've got some academic support that's happening outside of class and meeting outside of class as needed support in terms of case management. I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. We do, and I'm not going to be able to go into all the details, right, have some of our social science research, right, talking about collecting data on comfort approaching instructor, uses of active learning, sense of community with other students, right, and really trying to benefit, right, students to actually normalize help-seeking behavior in our academic success center. But ultimately, one of our main goals is try to increase the actual success of moving through these gateway STEM classes into advanced work, right? And so, yeah, one of the specific individual things that we do is we hire cadre of student workers, right, that actually serve as peer leaders, which actually help facilitate active learning. They lead 1 hour or 50-minute, because that's our class meeting time, right, workshops for subsets of the individual groups, so 10 or few students in each workshop. They also provide some drop-in tutoring, and this is all, of course, supported within our academic enrichment center. We have a STEM learning specialist that the grant has funded, right? So to give you an idea, these are some of the specific individual sort of workshops that look like that will complement gateway algebra or gateway chemistry or gateway biology classes. And the organization that we've really sort of worked with, right, is called the Peer-Led Team Learning International Society, right? Some of you may be familiar with supplemental instruction. So I hope many of you are also familiar with PLTL. The big thing about PLTL is it is a embedded part of the course. So faculty members that have agreed to embed tutors have agreed to basically require students to gather outside of class, the regular scheduled class time, in these specific individual workshops. Yeah, we've actually been trying to reach a big number of our specific individual students. So I said we've got about 2,100 total students in the university, right? And we're in last spring, we were over 10% of them are actually participating in terms of the head count, in terms of a course that is supported with embedded tutorings, right? Something else that I'm happy to discuss if people want to send me an email. I did initially write the grant to support biology, chemistry, and algebra, but as we got some more sort of momentum, I did write a supplemental award to the National Science Foundation, which allowed us to actually expand into the disciplines of neuroscience and into calculus, right? So that was a supplemental award that I sent. So that's the student piece, right? So we actually have some individual student employees that we hire as part of our grant. We also have our individual faculty members. So in order to do PLTL, you really need faculty buy-in. And so we actually end up going through, before we wrote the grant, talking to individual departments and talking about what our specific model would look like. And essentially when students, when we embed tutors, we also have the faculty gather, right, 1 hour every other week during a specific individual semester to actually sort of reflect, right, on inclusive teaching practices and also the progress of the PLTL, right? We've actually been able to grow, right? So we had 7 individual faculty members participate in the 1920, 20 participants in our most recent year. So we've been seeing robust growth. The last piece of our intervention that I want to talk about is thinking about when students run into issues like housing insecurity or food insecurity or transportation issues, right? Things that are sort of non-academic issues that might actually interfere. We actually do have a specific individual a way that they can either self-refer or have a referral system. It's called Star Tracker, where the Dominican University Stars, to work with the case manager. And one of the other budget lines of our grant is we fund a graduate student in our graduate school of social work, which actually will end up meeting with students that that need sort of access to different types of connections, right, to either on or off campus resources. And I just want to talk a little bit about sort of these types of referrals. Have been to the Wellness Center. We have an increasing proportion of undocumented students. So we have support for undocumented students, financial hardship, especially in COVID. There's lots of issues with technology, so we're connecting students with laptops, right? There are other programs individually that either we run or are grant funded that actually support academic and personal growth, including this Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation, which I've also mentioned in part of my bio is another program that I participate in, right? And so these are all the specific individual connections. And so ultimately what we're trying to do is try to think about sort of supporting students in a holistic manner before the academic year, in the academic year, right? And then not only in terms of academic and non-academic needs. And we've been really pleased with our Ds, Fs, or withdrawal rates. We had baseline data that we submitted as part of the grant application to talk about what the specific individual outcomes were for not only Hispanic students, but all students, right, in terms of specific individual grade. And what we've been able to see is as we've been reaching a greater number of students over these 3 complete academic years of the intervention, we've been able to bring the DFW rates down, right? So that's the basic sort of outline of our specific individual approach in terms of a holistic sort of manner. We're not necessarily targeted to a specific individual STEM discipline, but try to cut across several different STEM disciplines. I think that's about the time I have, and I think the way we discussed was I was going to stop share and then have it pass on to Carol, and then we'll take questions at the very end, right? So thank you very much for your time. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you. Dr. Shubi, are you ready? I think you need to unmute.
I guess I should unmute, huh? That will make it more interesting. All right, let me see if I can share my talk. Uh-oh, stop share.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes, not the complete one. Okay, now we see it. Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Are we
okay?
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for inviting me to the HIS STEM Resource Hub. It's my pleasure to tell you about the NSF Data Science Program with career support and connections to industry. I'm the PI. My name is Carol Shubin, and I work in the Department of Mathematics at Cal State Northridge. Just a little background on Northridge. We're a very big university. We serve northern Los Angeles. The vast majority of our students are on some form of financial aid. We are a majority Hispanic institution, but we have still what I consider too low 6-year graduation rate. In fact, a lot of our students, it is higher if you go out a little longer than 6 years, because many of our students are commuters that work at least part-time jobs. And college is perceived as a pathway to employment and economic security. They're not too many people that are going just for the love of learning. So particularly in the science and engineering disciplines, they're looking for a job. So before I tell you about the goals of the project, I want to back up and say a little bit about the math department before we had the grant. So basically, if you were a math major, our preparation was for you either to become a secondary ed teacher, or if you went to the master's program to become a community college teacher, or if you are really inclined to go on to a PhD granting institution to become a faculty member at a baccalaureate or R1 kind of university. So we had one class in sort of scientific computation, and we required students to take one computer science class, but honestly, it's not enough for them to become comfortable in programming and solving problems. So that's the background of why we created this, that we saw that there was a need, that students really wanted to be in the workforce, and they didn't have the skills. So part of it was even figuring out what skills does industry need, and then giving them the research experience so they could obtain the skills, and then trying to help them find internships or jobs. And part of it too, the math department had almost no connections with industry. And so nobody would reach out to us and say, oh, you know, we have this opening, you know, do you have any good students? Send them to us. So we needed to start to establish those connections. What happened here? So who participated? So we targeted math and computer science, but we let in a few people from biology, business, psychology, engineering. So we were looking at about 20 to 25 students a year. And what we found out is there was a very, very big range in their coding abilities, and that we had to refine our instruction over time to deal with that. During COVID, Maria Elena Zavala sent us 2 MARC students of hers because their labs were closed, but we were able to run a virtual program. So I'll get to the COVID in a little bit. So let me just say what we did. We had a 6-week boot camp, short courses, year-long research projects, seminars to develop career skills and hear industry speakers. And then there was that mentorship to find internships and jobs. So the 6-week program, we switched programming languages. First we used R, and then we used Python. There's always a big debate amongst people, like, you know, what to do. They learned some database management, pre-processing. Data science really relies on machine learning, and there's a certain software package that we use, a Python package called scikit-learn. And it's important to have data visualization, so they learned various packages for that. They had a little introduction to AWS, but not much. There was a lot of focus on the analysis, interpretation of the statistical models. And the proof in the pudding was that they would get real data sets from public data centers, such as UCI Machine Learning Data Repository at Kaggle, and were given projects to work on. So these were like mini projects that we had during the boot camp, and they would work in teams and then present their result. So during the year, there were bi-weekly seminars with guest speakers, and we sat down and really read through their resumes. You would be surprised at how not good some of them are. They really, really, really need help to sell themselves and, you know, put forward their skills. We talked about interviewing skills. We had some people from Google and from where else? A couple places, you know, really explain the interview process. Particularly, it's quite technical, so they really need to study for the interviews. We help them develop LinkedIn pages. We did offer some short courses on GIS remote sensing, neural nets, and computer vision. That helped to kind of beef up their resumes, that they looked like they were doing very, you know, hot things. Okay, so just like all of us, COVID struck and everything went virtual. So I would say, as far as the delivery of the content, we were able to maintain that. But I do think the students lost something by not being able, they worked in groups remotely, but I don't think it's quite the same as really being together. So they nonetheless got internships and jobs, et cetera. But I, you know, it's just unfortunate. So, okay, this meeting has to do a little bit with mentoring. So I want to first give you a little bit of a definition of how I think of a mentor. It's a person who goes beyond offering technical advice and helps the student form good judgment about the field and their career. So I felt strongly about this. I personally didn't have a mentor in college, and I drifted a lot. I think getting some good advice can save you years of time and maybe help you become happier faster, because they can help direct you to help you kind of figure out what's good for you. What we found is, because a lot of our students are first generation and don't have a lot of family support for this kind of work, they did need encouragement and actual help to apply for the internships, like read over their cover letters and really get into the details with them. And I also found that not all good advisors are good mentors. Okay, so you know, you go with the best people you can find, and people just have a range of how much they're willing to kind of engage with students on a personal level. Some advisors were very much like just trying to get their skills matched up with the project. And others were able to go a little further. So students met with their advisor or mentor once a week for at least an hour. And this was often in small groups, because we only had like 7 advisors for 25 students. And both the mentors and advisors were required to report to me quarterly. I did engage a little bit more frequently with them, particularly if there was a kind of an issue, but I'm pretty hands-off. If people are doing well, I don't like to bother them. I feel like, you know, they don't need a lot of paperwork. They just need to be left alone and encouraged. And then the students gave a talk in December and May. So we had lots and lots of different kinds of projects. I'm not going to go through the details. I'll just say some came from really like hardcore math and physics. Some were more ecological with data from JPL. Some were GIS, like policing related. Of course, we had about 6 COVID projects. Again, like ranging from being more computer sciencey to more, some were more social, like what groups were affected, and some were more mathematical. We got data from NASA. We got data from a performing arts center. There were groups in biology and physics that work with us. And we also had some computer vision projects. So this is just a short list. There were more. So it was all over the map. And it was a challenge placing the student in the right project. That to some to a large extent, I let them choose what project, but we couldn't have like if 7 people wanted to be on it, that was too many. So, it was a balancing act to find a good project for the student, given their level of mathematical and compute and coding sophistication. And then the students were required to apply for 3 internships. And okay, now I'm going to brag. We got terrific internships at JPL, General Motors, PennyMac, NASA, etc. So I was really, really, really happy about that. And that was the most positive feedback that I got, that what we were doing was working. And then once the students got the internships, that made it a lot easier to apply for jobs. So I'm happy to report that many of them have full-time jobs and are making a lot of money. Some of them are making a lot more money than we are. So now it was not our goal to send students to graduate programs, but many of them kind of realized that that would be beneficial. They either realized they wanted to know more computer science or they wanted to know more statistics. So we have students at all the programs listed below, and a couple even have at this point finished their master's and are applying for PhD programs. But again, this wasn't our goal. It was a very welcome secondary product. Now, in order to kind of institutionalize our work, we created a data science minor, which has 5 courses, and it lives in the computer science department, but a lot of math students take it because it only has 2 extra classes for them. And a lot of computer science students take it because it's only 2 extra courses for them. And there's a chance for them to do projects in their capstone class. So about 20 students are now in the data science minor. So another way we tried to institutionalize the program is to create the industrial math group. So we have a web presence where we list internship and career opportunities. We still read over resumes and talk to students about applying for jobs and offer seminars with speakers from industry. And slowly but surely, we're trying to make connections and meet people in local industry. Okay, so I'd like to thank my co-PIs. This was certainly not a solo project. I depended very heavily on my 2 co-PIs from math and 2 co-PIs from computer science. And then I want to say we had a group of really wonderful TAs, and a lot of our guest speakers were super inspirational. So that's basically what I got to say to you. And of course, I want to thank the NSF for funding us. Our funding is running out this December 31st. So it's been really fun, and I've enjoyed every minute of this and just wish I could go on and on. Okay, thanks.
Well, thank you very much for having the opportunity to share your ideas this afternoon, and we really appreciate your participation. We will be posting the video recording in our portal, but you have to everybody has to register to become a member to have access to the videos. So we really appreciate. And if there is anything else that you would like to share, Dr. Anderson and Dr. Shubin, to our participants, we'll be very happy to post them on our portal. Thank you. Well, that will be all for this afternoon, and hope to see you again soon.